Hello everybody, I'm here today to play some more TF2. As you can see, I'm back after another week doing another TF2 rant. I'm getting a bit committed to this thing. Anyway, as you can see, I'm not using a gun, which is, I'm sorry about that, but I saw this tag video talking about the way he doesn't use view models for the scout weapons or the soldier weapons, so I tried it with the scout and I realized I couldn't aim after using the view models. So I'm sorry for that. I'll try and tank it next time unless you don't mind seeing this. If so, that's fine too. Anyway, as per usual, I am not here today to talk about TF2. I am here today to talk about a very, very broad part of video games. It is basically the thing that combined PS3 players with Xbox players, RTS lovers with FPS lovers. It made every single corner of the video game community come together to fight this. And it was the idea that video games cause violence. Now, this has been a big thing for years, a very long time. Not the entire time video games have been around, but the entire time violent video games have been around, mature video games. Now, the idea is, of course, that because you constantly see video games in front where you kill things or blow them up with bazookas or just take over something, or like take over the Pentagon, I don't know what game you take over the Pentagon, they think that makes people want to do it in real life, and they think that it affects. As you can probably guess, I am firmly on the against side. I am a gamer. I've played games for about 10 years, 15 years. Considering I'm not that old, you can imagine that's quite impressive. About 10 years, probably. Anyway, I have never got out of my seat and wanted to attack someone after playing TF2 or Quake or Call of Duty or any of those games. I've never had the urge to attack anything afterwards, and that's because in my opinion it doesn't affect your view of reality. I think most people with a solid moral code are able to just go, okay, this is wrong, I'm not supposed to do this in real life, this is a video game where different rules exist. Now, I understand that it probably would get harder and harder for people who don't have a solid moral ground, like for example children, who would play games for older ages like Call of Duty that actually I'm saying tries, it's not realistic, but it tries to be realistic, it has a realistic tone to it, you use realistic guns that actually exist. And, you know, it shows your actual hands and graphics go up every year, and they try and make it more and more realistic every year. And as a result of that, I understand the worry that's coming from it, that's saying, from older parents that are saying, well, won't kids be affected by this? Now, this is basically the same argument as saying, doesn't TV affect a person? And to all of that I say, no, it doesn't. Unless the person has that distorts their line of dream from reality, well, like schizophrenia or any of those other diseases, that's when it becomes a problem, because if people don't have a set moral guideline, they are going to think it's reality and are going to cause problems when they're trying to live out the game. A bit like wrestling. The thing with wrestling is that they actually try their best to make it look realistic, even more so than video games, and there has been a record amount of injuries as a result of wrestling, fighting, and all that kind of stuff, and that's purely because they're real people in real life who are doing real life stunts to each other, but act like it's not stunts. That's dangerous, because that destroys the line between reality and fiction, and that's when problems arise. Now, of course, in video games, it's not the same thing. Oculus Rift might do something towards that, but really, less realistic games like, for example, TF2, wouldn't make you want to shoot someone in the face, because yeah, you do shoot people in the game, but you clearly can see from the art style, the way you move, the way you can fire, like the way you could shoot your feet and jump into the air like way higher than you should, that all those different things contribute towards the lack of reality that exists. There is no intention of making it look real, therefore it doesn't feel real. So when you're living out your life, it doesn't feel like you actually have to live it out. Now, I presume you all know where this whole controversy came from. Now, there was a horrible tragedy in the very late 90s, early 2000s, which everyone knows about, and is basically the reason why video games have had this controversy. And that, of course, was the horrible school shooting that happened in Columbine. This thing is considered by pretty much everyone to be a tragedy, and people who are less educated into video games will blame video games, because the biggest argument towards video games, and the one that's always given in courts and stuff to try and change ratings and stuff and enforce them, is always that the people who are involved in like the actual causing of the shooting, they played a lot of Doom. People say they played a lot of Doom, like they were big massive Doom fans. But the thing with Doom is, once again, is that there is a very clear line between reality and fiction. it's a lot more possible that the people involved had mental issues. And in fact, I heard they weren't exactly doing well socially either. I think they're just looking out to blame something else for this, because they have to blame something on a bigger scale than just some kids who had mental issues. Now, it is possible they didn't have mental issues and games distorted them, but I find it highly unlikely that it did end up like that. Of course, I did make a video before saying about how people get angry and frustrated when they're playing badly in one of these video games, but that isn't actually because of the game's violent tendencies. It's because you're angry. It's because the game's going badly for you. The reason this doesn't happen in movies or film is because there's no interaction. You're not required to have a certain set of skills or to be capable of fighting. You just have to watch it. So there's no frustration involved. That explains the aggression given after games and why people break their keyboards and get all pissed off about these different things. It isn't because of the actual violent tendencies of the game, it's because the interaction is frustrating them because they're failing. Now, of course, I do actually understand where the other side's coming from. Now, it is possible that people that otherwise wouldn't have, developed these anger tendencies get into video games and develop them. It is possible for that, but really, my opinion, that's the parents' decision not to give the kids the games too early, because I think if you play games too early, it does affect your moral code and the way you act in life. Like, my whole argument was based on my age, 14 to 18 to 20-year-olds. They're completely unaffected by violence in video games. It's like the only exception I can really think of in video games is the very young children, like 7 or 8 or 9, the ones who are still growing their moral codes, and their frontal lobe is still forming, and they're still deciding what's right and what isn't. And it could cause problems if you're playing games like Call of Duty where you kill things all the time. I think in all realism, there's a reason there is a rating on these games, and I think the parents should make sure that their parents aren't playing these 18 games. Because I guarantee you, there are very young kids playing Call of Duty today. I'd say it's at least a quarter of their market. Anyway, to conclude, I think rating systems are a very important thing, and I think parents should implement them on their kids just to make sure the kids have a fairly good moral code before they get into this stuff. They're there for a reason. I think personally that ratings shouldn't be rated on how much violence or sex they have in it. I think it should be more rated on the fact that how much it would affect a child, how sadistic is the game, most importantly, how realistic the game is, because realism really does affect the amount of, because realism is a very big factor towards this for very, very young kids. Anyway, that's it. If you liked what you saw, then I'll take it next time. If you didn't like what you saw, then I won't take it next time. Feel free to like and subscribe. Bye.